People will buy a rent roll, and I talk to people daily about their current position, and they might be, I'm at 200 properties under management. I feel like I've hit a ceiling. I can't go beyond that. And they're like, if I buy another 100, that'll get me over that hump. Now, it does initially, but you have to remember that if 10% of your managements are getting lost every year through sales, through mismanagement, through people moving back in. It's around that 10% mark. And if you don't have a plan to replenish that, the bigger you get, the more you need to replenish. So at 1,000 managements, you need to find 100 managements every year just to stay still. So it's all well and good to say, well, I've got enough of a deposit to go and buy another 500 managements. But if you don't have a plan around how you're going to replenish the ones you're losing, because if you can't break 100 and grow beyond 100, when you're at 200 and you're losing 20 a year, you're just going to go backwards. So you're buying a rent roll effectively just to lose management. So I always say to people, yes, it is definitely a strategy to buy and to grow and to get over that hump. But what are your actual plans in the business? What are you going to change fundamentally to keep the growth going?
Welcome to the Property Management Podcast. I'm super excited to have you here. If there's one challenge I keep hearing again and again right now from business owners in our industry, it's this. How do I actually grow my rent roll? If I had $1 for every time I get asked this question, I'd be a very wealthy woman by now, and I wouldn't have to keep doing this podcast. And right now, let's be honest, growth is actually harder than ever. The market is definitely shifting. There's more competition, tighter margins, and clients who are expecting more for way less. Organic growth feels like a very slow grind right now. And it's no surprise that many are looking to buy a rent roll as a quick fix to scale their business. But here's the big question we're tackling today. If you can't grow organically, should you even be buying a rent roll? To help me unpack this, I'm joined by Stephen Marinucci from Mara Finance, one of the most respected names in rent roll funding in Australia. With years of experience supporting agencies with financial solutions tailored to the real estate industry, Stephen has seen it all, the good, the bad, and the financially risky. In this episode, we're going to dive into the real conversation around growth in today's market, including why organic growth is still your best indicator of long-term success and what it tells you about your business, the biggest mistakes agencies make when rushing into rent roll acquisitions, what banks and funders are really looking for when assessing your ability to take on a rent roll, and why growth without solid foundations can actually set you back and not move you forward. So if you've ever felt stuck trying to grow, and you're seriously considering buying a rent roll to speed things up, this episode is going to give you a fresh perspective and probably save you a few headaches and dollars along the way. Let's dive on in. Stephen, thank you so much for joining me on the Property Management Podcast. Before we dive in, can you share with our audience a little bit about yourself and what you do now?
Hi, Kylie. Thank you so much for having me on the program. Look, a little bit about myself. I am a finance broker. I specialize only in rent roll financing, and I've been doing that across 2 banks for the last 15 years. And so a lot of people come to me when they're looking at acquiring a rent roll, when they're wanting to change banks, they'll come to me and look at negotiating a better deal with their current bank or looking at moving them somewhere else. But all I do 100% is rent roll financing. It's something that I'm very passionate about and I've done for a long time.
Well, yes, and we were just having a conversation off air. My business was was a client early on, and you've sort of been through that whole journey with Macquarie Bank when you were back there in the day.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the topic today, and growth is literally a conversation I am having daily at the moment. And it seems more difficult than ever at the moment. I'm not sure what is going on. And I'm thinking maybe the privacy laws is helping people having difficulty accessing data, maybe building slowed. Everyone just seems to be saying that they're really struggling with growth at the moment. And are you seeing that as an issue across a lot of the rent roll business owners that you are working with as well?
Absolutely. It's the biggest thing. And if you look at like total numbers of properties under management across all my clients' portfolios, it's only gone one way. Very rarely will you'll see an agency that's increased in numbers, and the ones that are increasing in numbers are generally ones that are in those growth areas. Those more established, like inner city areas, for example, where they're growing organically, generally is off the back of one, a strong sales team. So they've got to have a big sales team that are transacting properties frequently, where they're presented with opportunities where investors have purchased properties. But otherwise, in the absence of that, it's all on price. So we've found that people are just competing on price. We'll do it for free for 3 months. We'll do it for free for 6 months if you bring our management across it. That's it, and which is it's flawed. No one really wins in that scenario apart from the landlord for a few months. And yeah, that's what I'm finding is it's based on price if you want to grow, which is in a lot of businesses where they've got to focus on their profitability, it doesn't make sense to do that.
Absolutely. And that is definitely what is happening. A lot of business owners that I have been working with are really feeling the pinch financially and are not sure where to go. And I think retention in this current marketplace is probably one of the best ways to grow, is not minimizing that loss. But let's talk about, obviously you're in rent roll financing, and a lot of people think that buying rent rolls is the solution to their growth issues. But you believe that if you can't grow organically, then there is probably no point in buying a rent roll. Is that what you're?
Yeah, absolutely. Or even in the absence of actually having a plan for growth. So people will buy a rent roll, and I talk to people daily about their current position, and they might be, I'm at 200 properties under management. I feel like I've hit a ceiling. I can't go beyond that. And they're like, if I buy another 100, that'll get me over that hump. Now, it does initially, but you have to remember that 10% of your managements are getting lost every year through sales, through mismanagement, through people moving back in. It's around that 10% mark. And if you don't have a plan to replenish that, the bigger you get, the more you need to replenish. So at 1,000 managements, you need to find 100 managements every year just to stay still. So it's all well and good to say, well, I've got enough of a deposit to go and buy another 500 managements. But if you don't have a plan around how you're going to replenish the ones you're losing, because if you can't break 100 and grow beyond 100, when you're at 200 and you're losing 20 a year, you're just going to go backwards. So you're buying a rent roll effectively just to lose management. So I always say to people, yes, it is definitely a strategy to buy and to grow and to get over that hump. But what are your actual plans in the business? What are you going to change fundamentally to keep the growth going?
So what can you give us some tips around that then? What are some of the best ways that you've seen business owners grow their rent rolls organically over the years? And how do you stop that natural attrition? How do you, I mean, you're not going to stop the natural attrition, but how are you going to replace those ones that you lose through that process?
That's the $1 million question. And I'd love to have a crystal ball to work out what the ultimate answer is. But having a bigger rent roll does give you a bit more cash flow to be able to afford to perhaps buy a BDM, to pay for a BDM, for them to help grow organically. But how are they growing? Because what is a BDM? Somebody who's in a big sales team and just shuffles paper from the sales agents to the property managers, or is a BDM who's somebody who's physically out talking to referral partners all the time, to accountants, financial planners, mortgage brokers around, look, you finance the person to buy an investment property. Can we have an opportunity to look at managing that property thereafter? So that is what I think a true BDM should be. And having a bigger rent roll does give you the cash flow to be able to afford that. So that is the strategy that a lot of people use, is like, well, if I do get bigger, I'll have additional cash flow to be able to fund that. But people need to have a plan before actually buying it. And this is why I think there's not many property management only businesses that are extremely large. There's always another referral source or revenue stream to that business to be able to refer them back in. So it's something that if you are going to buy and you haven't been able to crack that growth, then what are you going to change if you were to acquire to make sure that you can maintain and continue to grow that rent roll?
So what do you think property management only businesses can grow large rent rolls without the addition of like the sales referrals coming in? What's your
The num
experience around that?
the number of businesses that are pure, in a pure sense, property management only, that are large are few and far between. It's been tried time and time again, and it just doesn't work. It's there needs to be the referral source through the sales, but also like if you've got 1,000 managements in your property management only, and you're losing 100 potential sales listings off the back of that every single year, which if you're a sales and rentals business makes absolute sense. It's very hard to grow and be profitable in that instance. I've got a couple of businesses to look after that are around that 1,000 properties under management that are predominantly rentals only. Their strategy is different. Their strategy is they actually put a part of their profit every single year. So they've got a bit of a pool of cash that they can go and acquire more rentals when a small parcel of 50 or 100 comes up. And they think that buying 50 or 100 in small parcels is actually cheaper than paying for a BDM and to bring them in. So, but the only, I guess, there is a fear of the unknown that may not be as clean as a rental that you may have brought in organically. But in saying that, this person's built a successful business on the back of small acquisitions, parking cash aside out of their profit to be able to go and invest back into the business to buy more rentals to top it back up to that 1,000 property mark.
And do you think that's a good strategy? Does it works, or is it a risky strategy? And is there a different way that you would recommend that people do that?
It's risky. Look, each business has got their own business plan, their own agenda. But I just think that you'll never find those small parcels that are 50 or 100 in that core area that you want to be in. And then you end up buying 50 or 100 properties that are all over the place. The difficulty with that then is when you want to exit, who's going to buy a business? Because the local Ray White or LJ Hawker or Harcourt's office that is in that core suburb may not want to, and they might be in central Brisbane. They may not want to pick up 20 or 30 managements that are in Caboolture. The reason for that is, look, they might be rented okay. They might be okay properties, but more than likely, when that landlord decides that they're going to sell, they're not going to sell with an agency that's 50 kilometers away. They're going to sell with the local agent who understands that particular market around what's selling, what their anticipated value is of their property. The person who is 50 kilometers away isn't going to be an expert in that area. They can't be experts in every area, and they may not yield the best result for that landlord when the time comes to sell. So I'm a big believer that it needs to, if you are doing rentals and sales, it needs to be extremely focused. It needs to be in your area because when it does come up, when those properties do come up for sale, they're in your market. And more than likely, if you're doing a good job as a rental manager, they will go to you first when it comes time to sell.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I have had portfolios as all over the place, Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, Caboolture, and ended up selling off different pockets because it was just too hard, too far to manage. And you're right, they do sell with like somebody where I'm in Ipswich at Caboolture, we're not going to sell with me. So
Absolutely.
yeah, but that's another strategy in itself, though. If you can build up a good portfolio organically in those areas and then sell them off, if you've got good relationship and referral partners in those areas. I had a great relationship with a developer who every pocket that he built in, he referred all those properties back to us. So that was a great strategy for us when we first started out. But then as you get bigger, like you said, the bigger your rent roll, the more problems that you have. So yeah, where was I
You
going to
have
go?
to think as well. You have to think as well that if you got 100 rentals, if you got 1,000 rentals, and you might have 50 of them in the Gold Coast, for example, and if you're in Ipswich and you got 50 on the Gold Coast, 50 is probably enough to have not so much, I wouldn't say set up a satellite office, but like when you've got people doing routine inspections and stuff, doing it in clusters, reducing the cost to actually serve those properties. Because if you've got a staff member, if you're making $1,600 a year on a rental down at Pimpamar, for example, and you're based out of Ipswich, if you actually calculate the time and money it costs to manage that one property, which is so far out of your geographic area, and you're only making $1,600 a year from that property, if you calculate the staffing time it takes to get 3 hours of staff expense, plus the fuel in the car, plus everything else that goes along with it, you're not making any money out of that property. So you have to think about, yes, it might be a strategic relationship with a landlord, but are you actually going to be making any money whatsoever out of this property if it's so far out of your core market? A lot of people think that if they are returning, it is a low rental return, but if that property is going to come up for sale in the next 2 or 3 years, they might go, well, look, if I know that I'm going to sell it, I may persevere with it because there's a sales commission that'll come off the back of it. But it's something that you just have to be mindful of when you do have BDMs that are out there growing on your behalf. Whereas if you've got the strategy whereby you're acquiring, you can be a little bit more selective, but there's no perfect rent roll. And that's what a lot of people get caught up when they are buying. They're looking for the perfect rent roll. There is no such thing. There's always going to be properties that are a little bit left to field, but that's just the nature of the way that it works.
I think that's a great point you raised there. Growth, you think constantly of adding more properties to your portfolio. But if you're actually really smart with your numbers, you can actually make more profit, grow your business or grow your profit margin by working really smartly with your numbers. Like you said, letting go of those ones that aren't bringing in enough income for you or that are costing you too much. That's a great way to actually grow your business, or adding more fees or tweaking the fees that your management fees, or adding in other fees is another great way to grow your business. So would that be something you would look at in terms of if somebody was saying to you, I want to buy a rent roll? Is that a conversation you have with people? Well, obviously you look at what they're currently doing, and maybe just talk to us through that process that you work with people. I'm looking to buy a rent roll. I've got an existing agency. What is the process that you would go through with me? And then advise me on. Are you feeling overwhelmed and thinking about selling your rent roll? Don't worry, you're not alone, and HDNU is here to help. Whether you're ready to sell now or you just want to plan for the future, the friendly and approachable team at HDNU makes the process simple and stress-free. Hello, yes please. With over 30 years of expertise, they're not just about crunching the numbers. They genuinely care about helping you maximize your agency's value and get the best outcome for you. Their sales readiness bundle is like having a trusted advisor by your side. They'll work closely with you to assess your agency's key factors, create an easy to understand heat map of your strengths and opportunities, and then sit down with you for a 90-minute workshop to guide you on what to do next. They'll look at everything from rent roll earnings and rent arrears to compliance and team performance and explain it all in plain English. If you're planning to sell soon, HDNU can even handle the whole process for you, from finding qualified buyers to negotiating the deal. Their friendly, professional team takes the stress out of selling so you can feel confident every step of the way. And to get started, simply book in a meeting with the team today. Their link is in the show notes. They're here to help you move forward with confidence. Let's be real. Compliance is one of the biggest challenges in property management, and it can be overwhelming to navigate. It's time-consuming, stressful, and let's face it, one missed compliance check could lead to serious legal and financial risks, and no one wants that. That's where Sensor Insure comes in. Powered by smart sensor technology, it offers highly competitive building and landlord insurance, bundled with an ecosystem of smart safety devices. These include tamper-proof smoke alarms and water leak detectors with automated remote testing and a 24/7 accessible audit trail. Yes, you heard me right. Sensor Insure is a game changer. It's always on and integrates seamlessly with your trust platform to streamline processes and provides live reporting across your entire rental portfolio. This ensures you're always meeting compliance requirements, giving you total peace of mind. No more waking up in the middle of the night stressed or worried that you've missed something or your team has missed something. So whether you're looking to improve your processes and efficiency, reduce stress, or protect your agency from risk, Sensor Insure has you covered. You really should see how it works. I totally encourage you to book in a free demo today by heading to sensorglobal.com or the show notes to learn more about their solutions and how they can transform your compliance game.
Yeah, look, the absolute first thing that I do with all my clients is, understand their position at the moment. Like, I understand what if they've got an existing agency. I get blown away every day with people not understanding what the true value is of their rent roll. And it's something that, look, to get a formal valuation, you have to go through a valuer to do that. But just even have a basic understanding of, look, you might be in central Brisbane. It might be, if you've got $200,000 of recurring income, at a three times multiple, that's worth $600,000. I still come across people that don't understand that what they've already got is worth something. They're talking to their current bank saying, well, I want to buy something worth $1 million. I've got to come up with a 30% deposit or 40% deposit, but not understanding that the way that they should be looking at it is the combined value of the rent roll. I've got an asset here worth 600. I'm buying something worth $1 million. Combined, that's worth $1.6 million. And the banks will lend 60 to 70% of the value of that 1.6. So a lot of people get scared off going, well, I've got to put in all this money. Things are tight. Where I'm going to find $300,000 as a deposit? That a lot of times they don't need to. A lot of times people don't realize that they can use sometimes the equity in their property or an investment property to be able to come up with their deposit. It's a strategy I don't normally recommend, but for a lot of people whereby they might be new, like I'm seeing a lot of property managers come to me at the moment who are wanting to go on their own. And they're coming to me saying, look, I know that I can grow organically. I've done BDM. I can, but I need that cash flow to get me going. And I want to buy 100 managements to be able to know that I've got some income coming through because I need to live. They may use their property as security. I've done one recently up north, very similar to that scenario. They bought 100 managements, financed the whole amount. They just had the property as security. Within 3 months, they've already put on another 40 managements. So huge growth. But they wanted that cash flow and that safety net to do it. They didn't have the cash to do it, but they had equity in property. So everyone's scenario is different, but there's definitely, and also like the banks are very different in terms of what their processes are too. So for that person, there was only one or two banks that would look at a client like that who was effectively a startup, but there are a lot of other banks that do look at rent roll financing.
Perfect. So ideally, when somebody's looking at buying a rent roll, is there an ideal number that if they've got a number already that they've grown organically, what is that sweet spot that you would recommend that they look at an acquisition?
So I always say to people when they're starting out, like the ideal scenario is if you can grow to 100 organically or 150 organically without any debt. And if you can do that without having any debt in your business and you go again and you feel that because that shows you one, that you can grow. And if you can grow to organically to 100, 150, you can grow. So that's the first thing I look at. Once you add on another 100, a lot of that's profit. So if you're already paying rent, if you're already paying the increase in electricity for having another staff member perhaps, or a VA that's helping assist with the back office, if you're buying another 100, the costs are only minimal. So you're already paying all these costs. Where it doesn't work is if you've got 100 and you want to buy another 100, but that 100 involves having two more staff members, a new office, going into another whole area, like that's where it doesn't make sense. So if you keep it lean, keep it in your core area and not increase the costs, that's where it becomes profitable. And that's where I see businesses really succeed. But if you ask me in terms of an ideal sole director business, you're probably needing to be around that 300 properties under management to make okay money.
Yeah. So this is kind of off topic, but you just triggered a question in me. What are some of the ways that you would recommend businesses to run a lot leaner? Because again, profit margin is a big topic of conversation at the moment.
Yeah.
Every technology costs, software. You can have all the bells and whistles and it's going to cost you an absolute fortune and they're all great. But what are some of the ways that businesses you recommend that they can lean down and trim those expenses?
Well, like it still blows me away. Some businesses that walk into are running 60, 70 properties per property manager. Like it's incredible that there are still businesses that are running that inefficiently out there. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you see people that are running 250 properties under management with one property manager and two VAs. So in terms of the actual staffing costs as a percentage, like they're running extremely lean compared to their cost to manage the 250 properties might be $150,000, but they're making over $600,000 in income from those properties. Like, whereas if they were running four full-time property managers onshore, a very different proposition. There is no money in it then. So, yeah, I'm looking after businesses that are profitable in Victoria, for example, that are running a double AMI. So the average annual management income per property at around $1,200 or $1,300. They're profitable. I'm
Oh,
seeing
wow.
some businesses in Queensland that are running at $2,500 per property and are not profitable. So it just goes to show that they've had to adapt in Victoria. They're a much more competitive market, some big efficient agencies down there that are able to do things for cheaper because they're doing it. They're big in Victoria. They're much bigger businesses in general. They can do it with scale. They can charge 4.5% and still make money. Whereas in Queensland, I find the double AMI is rents have gone up, but fees as a percentage haven't really come back down that much. Our double AMI is huge, but the profit margin and all the staffing costs hasn't. That's all increased through COVID. And yeah, they're not as profit. They're probably as profitable as the Victorian ones, but they could be a whole lot more profitable.
And do you think that's because they're not embracing they're not embracing maybe the offshore support, are
But
the property management wages a lot higher up here than in Victoria? Like,
not as like the actual onshore cost here is not that much different anywhere around the country. Like and even like dealing with businesses that are regional Queensland, regional New South Wales, their cost per staff isn't too much dissimilar to what it is in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane. So it might be something as from $70,000 a year to $80,000 a year. The difference isn't really there, but it's where people have got really good systems and processes in their back office where they have outsourcing, where they're using it effectively and not just employing people for the sake of employing them. That's game changing. If you can have a full time property manager and two VAs at a total cost of maybe $150,000 all up for the VAs and the onshore person, that's what businesses really need to benchmark themselves on, saying, well, how much is it costing me in staffing per property to be able to run this rent roll? That's what's really important.
yeah, that's great advice. So how hard is it to get finance for a rent roll in the current market? Because there seems to be a lot of activity around buying and selling rent rolls currently. And I've had quite a conversation actually just last night with a client in South Australia, and he's really struggling with growth. And he was looking to buy a rent roll, but the cost of buying a rent roll in South Australia at the moment is crazy.
Yeah. And like it's incredible. Like in South Australia, I'm seeing multiples upwards of even four, like which is incredible, which is similar to eastern suburbs of Sydney. It all comes down to supply and demand at the end of the day. Like, if there's not much around, if it's a very good rent roll, people will pay more. Whereas in Queensland, people are blown away when I speak to some of my clients interstate saying that there's businesses in regional Queensland or even places like Ipswich, Toowoomba, $2.50. That's slowly creeping up, but compared to what a similar rent roll is in regional New South Wales, for example, at $3.50, it's incredible. And like Gold Coast, for example, is starting to increase at $3.50. We're seeing a few number of transactions come through at around that mark. But Brisbane and the other areas, Sunshine Coast actually, in saying that as well, is also increasing. But yeah, it's an interesting market. It's extremely expensive, and it makes you really. It just means that the payback time on that investment is it's very long.
Yeah. So is it difficult to get finance? Then sorry, I'll go back to my original question. Yeah, how, and maybe talk us through that whole, if somebody's there, they're at that sweet spot that you mentioned earlier, and they're looking to grow, they want to get to that next stage, they've got a lean operation. How difficult is it for them to get finance, and what steps should they take?
Look, the first step for anyone who's even thinking about doing it is have a conversation with somebody like myself or their current bank saying, what do you think I can afford? before you go down the process of getting a valuation or anything, because it can, for myself, I'll have a 5 minute conversation with somebody and say, look, this is what I think you can or can't do. So the other things that you can be doing inside your business before you even go for finance is make sure you clean up your profit and loss. Make sure you can make your business as profitable as it can look. Make sure things like your ATO obligations and superannuation obligations are up to date. Because when a bank, something may pop up tomorrow, you might have your competitor next door that may all of a sudden have to sell, and it is the most perfect opportunity. You want to make sure that you're ready, that if something like that does come up, you're ready to act. And the way to have your best foot forward is by making sure things like your taxes and super are all up to date before you go and apply for finance. So that's something that is within the business's control. And if it means that you have to cut some expenses, do that before you go and apply for finance. A lot of people will try and buy rent rolls to fix their financial position. That shouldn't be the case. It's just a stopgap, because I've seen it happen so many times where people are like, I'll just buy a rent roll, I'll make more money. They end up spending that money, that excess profit that they're making, and they're in the same position they were before. So just make sure that you're ready financially, that your business is in as good financial position as can be, and all those obligations are all up to date. That's the number one thing, but I would suggest doing before going down that path of formally applying for finance.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, the tax is an absolute killer, and I've spoken to, myself included, have had surprise tax bills come up, and I always recommend to everybody, you've got to have a separate tax account, and that's got to get put through every single time you do your mid or end of month disbursements or pay wages. You've got to put your tax aside.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than that tax bill hanging over your head when you're trying to
Yeah.
do business.
Yeah.
And
And look,
personal experience on that one. So
yeah, no, and look, there's always examples, and I've got one at the moment where a previous accountant hadn't done something properly, and there's probably some reasons behind that I've been able to mitigate with the bank that they're looking at doing finance with, but that's an exception to the rule. But like, banks always look at character first and foremost. Who are they lending the business to? And if this person's got an extremely large tax bill, driving a very expensive car, living way behind their means, the banks will work that out pretty quickly. So they'll want to make sure that they are lending the money to the right person, and that they know how to run this business.
amazing. Thank you. That's great advice. Now, could you share some personal development tips, maybe a tool, a resource, a book, a podcast, or something that you think will help our listeners today?
That is one that I probably struggle a bit when you sent through the question. But look, for myself, it's a bit selfish, but like, I always, in business, and it's very different going into my own business rather than sitting in an ivory tower and in an office in the middle of the city. But
Welcome
I
to
always say
the
to
world.
myself, yeah, I know exactly. It was amazing that I used to do presentations on telling people how to run businesses, but I tell you what, when you're actually running it yourself, it's very different. Somebody told me a long time ago, it's like, if you're not busy, get busy, and that's the one thing that I live and die by. So if I know that my phone's not ringing, if I'm not busy, I pick up the phone and I make myself busy. It's something that, as like, I'm in sales, like everyone else who's probably listening to this podcast.
Sales and
It's
marketing is what we're all in. Yep.
sales and marketing, and look, your if you're prospecting for somebody, they may not have that need now, but they'll always remember the last person they've spoken to about it. And if you're that last person, you'll get the phone call. So you need to make sure that you're on the phone all the time. And that's something that I've always lived and died by. And it's interesting when you make those calls and like, well, I was literally just about to buy a rent roll. Talk me through what I need to do. It's amazing how many of those conversations I have. So I always go, if I'm not busy, get busy.
That's great advice, and so relevant if somebody is listening to this and wanting to grow their business before acquiring a rent roll. You've got to do the work.
Yeah,
Gone are the days, if they ever were, where the people were coming to knocking on your door and calling you. You've got to now ask for the business, and if you're not going to do that, then you're not going to grow. So
exactly right.
perfect professional development advice there. Stephen, thank you so much for joining me. How can our audience connect with you further?
You can find me. I've got my email address, which is the steve@mara.finance. There's a little bit of information on my website as well, which is just mara.finance. But reach out to me on LinkedIn, on Instagram, Facebook. I'm on all the platforms. So feel free to reach out anytime. If you've got any questions, if you even just want to have a quick chat, it doesn't cost anything to have a conversation. I love having those conversations. I love seeing the journey that I've been doing this for so long. I've actually got a settlement today for somebody who I did finance for their first Renroll acquisition 12 years ago. They're getting out of business today. I love seeing that journey and the wealth that they've been able to create throughout that journey. So, and it all starts with that conversation, that initial conversation. How do I do this? Can I do it? So just give me a call it's even if you're having troubles with your current bank at the moment, want to have another opinion on your interest rates in terms of what you're getting charged, I can be a great sounding board for that as well.
Amazing. I will share all of the links in the show notes. Thank you again for joining me. I loved our conversation.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, Carly.
If you're ready to be a super organized, focused, and productive property manager, buckle up, because Colmio is about to revolutionize the way that you work. Colmio is the driving force behind property management excellence in residential real estate. Now picture this, a comprehensive end-to-end system designed to be the beating heart of your property management tasks, manage your properties, owners and tenants, and handle payments, inspections, and even marketing listings without leaving the platform. Colmio is designed to be an all-in-one solution to all your property management needs. And here's the game changer. Colmio isn't just software. It's been awarded the most innovative prop tech Scale Up in 2023. Yes, you heard it right. Colmio has been recognised for their groundbreaking approach to property management software. How good is that? So property managers, whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, dive into the future of property management with Colmio. You can book in a demo with the team today and go in their weekly draw for a Prezi gift card worth $100. All you need to do is to head to the link colmio.com/thatpropertymum, and Colmio is KOLMEO. Can I ask you a quick favour before you leave this episode? Now, we all know how important reviews are for businesses these days, and mine is no different. If you could spare just a minute to follow, rate and review this podcast, it would mean a lot to me. In fact, what would get me super excited is if you share this podcast with someone in the industry who you think might need to hear some of the episodes right now. And if you'd like to find out more about working with me or any of the products I have to help you start, grow or scale your property management business, head to my website, thatpropertymum.com.au, or check out the links in the show notes.